Hello and welcome to a cold, very chilly, very nippy greenhouse in a wet and windy garden. It's that time of year, folks. But I'm going to bring a little bit of summer sunshine today because we're going to talk about tomatoes, which I know you might find a bit weird because it's, I'm going to say it's October, it's almost November, and we're talking about tomatoes. But I've had so many questions about the tomato growing adventure this year and the outcomes and my reviews and thoughts from you guys who are planning on things for next year and you're wanting to have a wee bit of fun with the tomatoes. So I've gone through all my notes, and I've got my list to talk to you about, and I'm going to tell you all about the tomatoes I grew this year because I did something different. So let me cast your mind back. I'm going to put my hands in my pockets because it's so cold. We're going to go back to spring this year. So I actually sowed my first lot of tomato seeds at the start of March in the greenhouse. And then the second lot of seeds I sowed in April. Now the reason for this was, as always every year, I'll have tomatoes that are grown in the greenhouse that I'll sow a bit earlier. But the ones that are going to go out in the garden, I sow in April, that little bit later, because they can't go out into the garden until June. So that's why there's a staggering to the growing. But this year, I only grew dwarf and micro tomatoes. I didn't grow any of the standard tomatoes at all. So I took you through that and I explained it, and it is for a really good reason. In fact, it was for three good reasons. It was, number one, the size. I was deliberately growing small plants, and that's the thing. The micro and dwarf tomato plants don't necessarily give you smaller tomatoes, it's just the plants are smaller. And for me, when all I've got is this small space in my greenhouse and the limited growing space in the garden, small plants is a bonus. The second reason is because it's much easier. With standard tomatoes, you have to do an awful lot of pruning and care, a lot of feeding, a lot of watering to keep those big plants thriving. The thing with the dwarf and micros is there is no pruning. Zero pruning. Much easier. And because they're smaller plants, they don't need as much of the watering and feeding. Hurrah! And the third reason, which is a fabulous reason, and I think it's one you guys might like, smaller plant, grows faster, you get harvest much quicker. And if you don't believe me, we were eating our first ripe tomatoes at the start of June. Yep, I think it was the 2nd of June. Oh, so I'll give you a wee update on all the stuff in here, because first ripe tomato was last week. Oh, that was so good. Kate got the first one, that's the second one. There's more there. We'll fight over them. Oh, you can't beat the first tomatoes, can you? Just tomatoes that have flavour, rather than being little balls of disappointment. Happy, happy. Actually eating ripe tomatoes from then onwards, all the way right through till we ate the very last of them last week. So hurrah, we got loads and loads of tomatoes. It was brilliant from really early on in the season. So what did I grow then? Here's my list. So I actually grew an awful lot this year, and we're going to talk about this because it's part of the whole review thing. So I sowed in March, I had Mongolian dwarf, I had blue Zimmer tomat, Aztec yellow, Anne Mori dewdrop, gold dust, antho pink panther, aftershock, and tiny tiger. Okay, now what I did in April was I grew another set of some of these ones. I just doubled up on them. I grew Mongolian dwarf, blue Zimmer tomat, Aztec yellow, and Anne Mori dewdrop. Okay, now here's the thing: small plants. the idea was that I'd be able to have lots of plants, but they wouldn't take up as much space or be as much trouble. That didn't go the way planned at all. So what happened was, this whole side of the greenhouse was full of pots of tomatoes. And the whole back of the greenhouse was full of pots of tomatoes. And the thing is, the plants might be smaller, but I grew so many of them that I was just struggling. The greenhouse felt overwhelming. I had 2 rows of plants here, so I wasn't able to see the plants at the back as well as I had liked. And it meant that later on, when the plants got to their full size, some of the dwarfs, because although the dwarfs are smaller than full-size plants, some of the dwarfs were upright, so they were still over 1 metre tall. They were like just over 1 metre tall. They're still big plants, needing a lot of watering and feeding compared to the little tiny micros. And of course, because they were tall, I put them at the back, and then I couldn't see properly. So for a little bit, I was actually struggling with the antho pink panther and which was the one beside it? Can't remember, the aftershock. Those were the 2 bigger ones that I was growing. And what happened was the antho pink panther was just struggling a bit, and it got a lot of blossom end rot. So I decided, since it was such a trouble and I couldn't see what was growing and I was feeling a bit overwhelmed, I actually moved most of the tomatoes out and grew them in the garden rather than the greenhouse. And I have to say, it worked an absolute treat. I had them all in the green stalks, so I had a mixture of the micros. Now, micro tomatoes, these are little plants that were only grown to about 30 centimetres tall. Really, really small plants, and lots of little cherry or salad slicing sized tomatoes on them. They were loving the green stalks. I also had dwarfs in the green stalk. Now, not the antho pink panther and not the aftershock, because those were tall plants, but the Anmori dewdrop, tiny tiger, all those ones, I had them out in the green stalks because they kind of grow in a traily way. So although they only get to about 30 to 40 centimetres tall, but they actually trail, so the plant itself is a bit longer. But it all worked perfectly. These are exactly the type of plants you want to grow in a vertical system like the green stalk. Oh, warm tea on a cold day. Oh, in the greenhouse, that's what you need. Oh, warm cup to hope. Now, the thing is, right, I'm going to tell you right now, so if you're only here to find out what my opinion was, you can get it now and then you can go. You don't need to watch the rest of the video, because it was fabulous. Everything in the green stalk grew amazingly well. We got masses and masses of tomatoes, to the point where Kate was getting really sick of the tomatoes. However, I had grown lots of different colours and things this year just for the fun of it. So I didn't really think about it, and I didn't have enough just red tomatoes, so I didn't do any preserving of the tomatoes this year. They just weren't the right colours for sauces. But we did lots of tarts and all that kind of stuff, and it worked brilliantly. However, what am I going to grow again and what am I not going to grow again? What didn't do so well? Well, first off, there were a few tomatoes that just did not grow at all. Bah-ha-ha. No luck at all. Didn't get any germination. Didn't get any of them at all. Really quite disappointed. Tiny Tim, the same. I didn't get any plants at all. Really, really disappointed because I was looking forward to trying them. But the only ones that I actually wouldn't grow again because I don't think it was worth the trouble, Antho Pink Panther. Those ones were the ones that were the strange, almost plum tomato shape, long elongated tomatoes, and they were the kind of purpley red colours. I had so many problems with this plant. I actually only got 2 tomatoes off the plant to eat. The rest all had blossom end rot. It was just such a disappointment, that plant. Obviously, it's just, you sometimes get plants that are a bit more susceptible to problems than others, and obviously for me it was just one of those. Now, the other one I'm not going to grow again was gold dust. Now, gold dust, although it's a little dwarf plant, it grows really, really big, beautiful orange tomatoes, like almost beefsteak type. But the thing is, I grew them in the green stock outdoors and I hardly got a harvest off it. I got, I think, 6 or 7 tomatoes. And although they were big tomatoes, they weren't nearly as big as other people were reporting. So I think I've just accepted it wasn't one for growing in my garden. Didn't really work for me. But that's okay, because all of the rest were fabulous. So absolutely, I am going to grow Blau Zimmer tomato again. I'm going to add that to my list along with Anne-Marie Dewdrop, Aztec Yellow and Mongolian Dwarf as my standards. And I'm also going to add to that Tiny Tiger. Now, here's the thing. Tiny Tiger, tiny small plant, but big tomatoes, like proper slice and size tomatoes. Really, really cute, nice little tomatoes. Lovely to look at. So definitely adding them again. The other one I was really quite shocked at and I really like, Aftershock. Now, here's the thing. Aftershock weren't one of the ones that I would say were at first to ripen. However, we had loads of Anne-Marie Dewdrop. We had loads of Tiny Tiger. We were really enjoying them really, really early in June. And Aftershock just would not ripen. It just stayed green for ages. Just could not get this thing to ripen. Because they were green when they were ripe. I feel like a ripe muppet now. I never went and looked to see what colour it was going to be when it ripened. I just wasn't thinking. And one day I touched it and it was super soft. And I realised, these are ripe. These are ripe. Ah! Gorgeous, gorgeous tomatoes. They finished it a kind of greeny colour with gold stripes. Oh, they were just fabulous. And I couldn't believe I hadn't noticed they were ripe. But hurrah. So I will definitely add them to my list of tomatoes to grow again. Really impressed. Just checking my notes. I'm getting a cuppa. And it's a chance for a wee bit of tea. So doopy-doo. So I've mentioned that Aftershock's a weird colour. I've mentioned the gold dust didn't give me a lot of fruit. Yeah. The other thing this year, big surprise. Good big surprise. Mongolian Dwarf. So I have grown them for a few years and I really like them. Nice salad-sized tomatoes, slicing-sized tomatoes. Except for this year. This year, and I have no explanation for this other than maybe they were just much happier this year. This year, they were giving me huge tomatoes. Really, really big. The biggest tomatoes of all of them this year. Couldn't believe it. And I was still getting heaps and heaps of harvest from them. Those little guys were the hardest working tomatoes this year. So here's the thing. Going forward then, I'm going to stick with the micro and dwarf tomatoes. But I missed some of the fun of having the bigger standard plants, especially having the weirdness of them. Things like Barry's Crazy Cherry and the fact that it just grows so many tomatoes in a truss. I kind of missed having that fun this year. And the same with the Sweet Millions and the huge long trusses that you get. So I've decided for next year then, I'm going to mix it up a little tiny bit. I'm going to stick with all my dwarf and my micro tomatoes, and I'm going to stick with growing them outdoors in the green stock because it just worked so well, and the fact that I can grow them out there saves space in the greenhouse. But I'm going to bring back the Barry's Crazy Cherry and possibly the Marmande beefsteak tomatoes, and just grow a couple of those plants in here. So it's not going to take up heaps of space, but it's going to let me have that fun of growing those bigger plants as well to give me that variety. So there you go. So my review for my tomato growing for this year is dwarf and micro tomatoes was a rousing success. And I'm so glad I tried all those new ones. It has given me standards to grow in the garden this year. And it means I know I've got some good varieties for growing outdoors. Gives me a variety of colours, sizes, all the fun that goes with it, with an earlier harvest and big harvests right through the year. Now, it does mean I'm not going to be doing lots and lots of canning of sauces and that kind of thing like I normally do, but that's totally okay because we enjoyed every minute of eating those tomatoes this year. So yeah, little tomatoes, big thumbs up. So it's going to be interesting for next year then, isn't it? Now, there is a reason that I'm wanting to keep saving space in the greenhouse. There's some exciting things going to be happening, but we'll get to that a bit later on. Hopefully not too later on. See you next time, folks.